Welcome to Ethics and Values, Learning to Live with Graceful Presence. Today we'll be talking about Practice 5 of Graceful Presence, Care for the Moment, or Focus on the Next 15 Minutes. But I wanted to start out by stating an obvious point. That most of our life is filled with just ordinary moments. Not big highs or big lows, right? We wake up, we have breakfast, we go to school or work, we come home, right? We do homework, we watch some Netflix, whatever it might be. It's the same old routine, usually, day after day. Yet the trick is every now and then to remind ourselves of how absolutely beautiful, fabulous, and meaningful these ordinary moments really are. I mean, just think of everything that had to happen just so from the beginning of the universe through human history, the meeting of your parents, for you to exist right now in this moment. And every moment from that perspective is a miraculous gift. So we should be grateful for it, enjoy it. And even difficult moments can be enjoyed, for we don't know what they will bring. I think of a quote from Malcolm Muggeridge, who at the very end of his life, right, said, as an old man looking back on one's life, it's one of the things that strikes you most forcibly, that the only thing that's taught one anything is suffering, not success, not happiness, not anything like that. The only thing that really teaches one what life's about is suffering, affliction. I mean, he points to that idea that even what seems to be the worst possible moment or a very bad moment can in time turn out to be very important to your development as a human being. Remember what Montaigne said, right? The best things in life can happen when you don't get what you want. I remember a student I had at Westminster College. She was training for the Olympics when she had a bad fall that tore up her knee, which made it so that she could not ski competitively anymore. And it was crushing. I mean, her whole life had been spent in training for the Olympics. And now, in a flash, it was all gone. Her hopes of becoming an Olympic skier was gone. Now, she decided afterwards to change her major to nursing. And in one of her first nursing classes, she meets her husband. And she said a beautiful life commenced. And she never would have met him if she'd still been skiing. And she told me that her marriage to this wonderful man was worth much more than skiing in the Olympics. I remember a story my dad told me. My grandfather, my dad's father, was an alcoholic during my dad's early years and teenage years. And my dad tells me that when he was about 15, he comes down to breakfast one morning to discover his father, my grandfather, was already drunk. And as my dad sat down at the table, my drunk grandfather, poured a gallon of milk over my dad's head at breakfast. If you can imagine what that would be like, to have your drunk father pour a gallon of milk all over you. With tears of humiliation, my dad runs out of the house. He wanders up to Sugar House, to a drugstore. Now, this was way back when drugstores were also kind of small, soda fountain-y places. He sits down, and while he's drinking a soda, he notices across the way some girls about his age just sitting there. One of the girls came up to my dad and asked him how he was doing, because he looked, very disheveled and unhappy. They began to talk. They decided to go out on a date. Eventually, my dad marries this woman. She becomes my mom. They have me, and here I am. Now, it's tragic what happened to my dad, that his father, my grandfather, poured milk in a drunken rage all over him. Tragic. But look what it made possible, right? When I think about how it made my life possible and the life of my brothers and sisters and the happy marriage that my parents enjoyed. And I had so many experiences myself that really kind of confirm what Montaigne said, that the best things in life can happen when you don't get what you want. Now, this brings us to the fifth practice of graceful presence, learning to live in the present and in difficult moments by focusing on the next 15 minutes. I mean, let's for a moment think about time. We break time up into, past, present, and future. The past is the now that is no longer. The future is the now that is not yet. The present is the only now that we can experience and control. We can't change the past, nor can we control the future. We can only act in the now that is present. Yet how often are we mentally absent from the present moment, in regret about the past nows, in fear about the future nows, and so our present now is so often filled with regret and fear. But if we can learn to focus on just the next 15 minutes, it's amazing how much courage and motivation we can bring to our actions in the present moment. And now just a quick story. I have an acquaintance who's very adventurous, a very adventurous person. Once on an expedition, he tells me, he became lost with what seemed like no hope of rescue. With little food, no equipment, it seemed his fate was sealed. He should just give up and die. But then he realized, and I'll read this from what he told me, he said, in that moment, whether I lived or died was completely out of my control. I could do nothing to change my fate in that moment, he said. It occurred to me that what was in my control were my actions in the next 15 minutes. If I could just focus on the next 15 minutes and not worry about the 16th minute or the next hour or whole day, then I would be okay. I just had to take it 15 minutes at a time. Thinking beyond that 15th minute, and I lost my confidence, my resilience, my will to keep going. So that's what I did. I simply chose to take it 15 minutes at a time. And each subsequent 15 minutes got easier to do. Well, of course, he was eventually rescued. And while reflecting on the lessons he learned from that experience, he realized the broader implications of this focus on the next 15 minutes. And he writes, before I had been overwhelmed, thinking that I had to be loving and mindful and cheerful for the whole day, even the rest of my life. And the thought was too impossible and overwhelming. But it is possible, he says, if you think only of the next 15 minutes. I can love unconditionally, even an obnoxious person, for 15 minutes. I can practice mindfulness for 15 minutes. I can be an exemplary person for 15 minutes. You see, it is entirely possible to become a better person each day if you just focus on the next 15 minutes. Once you start, it becomes easier to continue. The next 15 minutes seem to follow naturally from the first. And it's this insight, I think, that makes it possible for all of us to begin to learn to live with graceful presence. I mean, think about it. For 15 minutes, I can be present to life with graceful presence, with calm self-confidence, emotional resilience, cheerfulness, and a loving and infectious enthusiasm for life, no matter what is happening. For 15 minutes, I can be kind to a rude person. For 15 minutes, I can keep going even when I feel like I want to give up. For 15 minutes, I can begin a project that I have been procrastinating. For 15 minutes, I can face my fears and anxieties with courage and faith. For 15 minutes, I can banish dissatisfaction from my mind. My commitment now is to how I am present to my life in the next 15 minutes. That's it. Don't worry about the next hour, the next day, or week or year. That becomes overwhelming. Just commit to doing your best for the next 15 minutes. Commit to being your best possible self for just the next 15 minutes. I would invite you to experiment with this, right? The next time you're procrastinating doing something you know you need to do, that's okay. But just tell yourself, you're just going to begin and work on that project for the next 15 minutes. The next time you're afraid, that's okay. But tell yourself, you're going to be courageous for the next 15 minutes. The next time you're anxious, that's okay. But tell yourself, you're going to act with confidence for just the next 15 minutes. The next time you're angry, upset, or annoyed, that's okay. But just tell yourself, you're going to act with compassion just for the next 15 minutes. Let's see if that won't help you live a life of graceful presence. Only focusing on living that way for the next 15 minutes. Now, since I have a little bit of time, I want to quickly review so far the practices of graceful presence that we've talked about in this course, if I may. The first practice is to care for your body. Now, if a chief obstacle to our well-being, as I've said over and over again, is our inability to live well with ourselves in our bodies, the first step, then, would be to learn to care for your body, realizing that the quality of our feelings, thoughts, desires, and actions is dependent on the quality of care we give to our bodies. So care for your body through getting enough sleep, proper diet, and exercise. And remember that when you feel stressed or anxious or fearful, your body tenses up, your blood pressure goes up, your heart beats faster, your digestion stops as your body prepares to fight, flee, or freeze. Be self-aware in these moments of what your body is doing. And in that moment, realize that by changing your posture and focusing on intentional breathing, you can calm your body. And also don't forget the power of joyful movement. Our body was meant to move, so move it. The second practice closely follows from the first practice, to care for your emotions. Don't react to your emotions or feelings. It's natural to feel a variety of emotions throughout the day, fear, anger, anxiety, for instance. But don't react to them. Don't throw that second dart. Don't ignore them or fight or suppress them, what you're feeling at all, right? But you don't have to be controlled by your feelings or emotions. Instead, focus on your breath and just let the emotions pass. The third practice is to care for your thoughts by directing your inner voice. At least that's what Marcus Aurelius said, and I agree with him. Our destiny lies in our own hands. Everything is, Marcus said, as our thinking makes it, and we control our thinking. We are formed and molded by our thoughts. What you will be tomorrow is determined by what you think today. If you want to be in control of your destiny, then control what you think today and inform your inner voice with love, compassion, understanding, and proactive language. The fourth practice is to focus on what you can control, not on what you cannot. Epictetus was our teacher here. He told us to do the one thing you can do, no matter how small, and not to worry about what is out of our control. We can't control life or what happens to us, but we can control ourselves and our response to what happens to us. Epictetus also taught us to remember that everything that we experience has two handles, an obstacle handle and an opportunity handle, and we choose which handle to pick it up by. Will we pick up this experience as an obstacle to our happiness and well-being, or will we pick it up as an opportunity for our happiness and well-being? Epictetus said it is our choice. Now, we just discussed the fifth practice, a graceful presence, right? I mean, just remember, if it sounds too hard to live with graceful presence, if it sounds too difficult not to react to your feelings, right? If it seems too difficult to care for your body, if such self-mastery seems impossible, just remind yourself not to worry about living this way, all day, all month, the next year, or for the rest of your life. Just do it for the next 15 minutes and see what happens. The sixth practice is to love life, and that's what we'll talk about in this course next week. I know you can live this way. I know you can do it. I believe in you. So start today to live with graceful presence. Start in the next 15 minutes. The quiz following this lecture, the quiz code for this lecture is 9119. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.